Well, good evening, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful evening, and welcome to the 1905 Committee Livestream. Tonight is really about answering your questions and addressing some of the concerns around 1905, some of the rumors and speculation that we will get into at the later part of the live stream. To start, I thought it would be helpful for a lot of people to understand 1905 right from the beginning, where the name came from, what the policies are, and our underlying principles. So 1905 itself, the name obviously is when Alberta became a province. It is far less interesting than some of the theories out there about it being somehow related to the Russian Revolution. We came up with 1905 committee when we were talking about, well, Alberta in general, and it was a matter of, what if we could do it all over again? What would it look like? Would we do things differently? And thus 1905 committee was born. Now, some of our principals, we held an inaugural meeting and we had invited some everyday Albertans who were working with different groups to come out and participate with us. We gave them some homework and we challenged them to come up with, 5 principles that were basically non-negotiable. Things that would not change regardless of government or leadership. And those principles, the first one that kept coming up was justice. One rule of law that applies to everybody equally. And the other one was a promise made is a promise kept. Now, the UCP has been quoting this for a very long time, and it's really just called accountability. Do what you say you're going to do, and integrity. Right? So accountability and integrity. Do what you're going to do, do what you say you're going to do, and then, of course, keep your promises. The other one would be speak the truth. For me, I get a little frustrated when I have to listen to Danielle Smith or anybody really talk about net zero. I honestly believe that we are just participating in the lie by continuing to use those 2 words in the same paragraph, let alone the same sentence. And so, I think it is government's responsibility to speak the truth. I don't think it's their job to censor. I don't think it's their job to challenge other people's opinions necessarily, but it is their job to speak what they know to be true or to call out what they also know to be false. So speak the truth. So, those were kind of the principles that everybody in the room agreed to, that these are non-negotiable. And so when I think of government, think that these things, principled approach to government, are non-negotiable. And so that is our principles, and I thought we would jump right into the policies, and then what I would do is just take some of your questions as they came up, and we can have a little bit of a conversation. So we've already talked a little bit about what 1905 is, and I'm just going to call up this screen here for you so that you can see. This is a copy of our website. Oh, it's not working. Let's just give me a moment here. No, it's not working. Oh, there we go. All right. Welcome to the 1905 committee. So we do have a website, www.1905committee.ca. And this talks to you a little bit about who we are, what our policies are. It has our petitions on there that you can sign. It also has how you can get involved. So please do encourage everybody to check it out if you haven't already. But realistically, we're just a grassroots political organization that is dedicated to engaging citizens and getting them involved, helping them express their voice and making it known that they do make a difference. And so you can't do that sitting on the sofa, but sometimes you don't even know where to get started. So hopefully organizations like 1905 are just here to help push people along the path of political engagement. And the reality is, if it's not 1905, then just get engaged and involved with someone or some other organization that has got some political affiliation and gets you out and involved and active in something that matters to you. So, we are very interested in policy because policy shapes the future of our province politically. And of course, that's our areas of expertise as far as getting involved. We want to focus on principles, obviously a principled government, but we're focused on policy. We're not really concerned about so much the leadership or other aspects, but what the policy are. Thus, for a lot of people, there's been a lot of talk about the AGM and us encouraging people to attend the AGM. Well, yes, because if your voice is going to make a difference, it is actually the UCP AGM where your voice can have the greatest impact. You are voting on policies that will shape the future of the party and, of course, right now the government, but it's also where you can be the most effective, because in reality, when you go to the ballot box on election day, you're one of 4.7 million people living in Alberta. So what, 2 million voters? Your voice is important, but it's not as effective as a UCP AGM where there's going to be maybe 4,000 people. 4,000 people. Think about that, because in the leadership for the UCP, it was 4,000 people who decided who the next premier was. This particular AGM has a leadership review. Not every AGM has a leadership review. This one happens to have a leadership review, of which case people have an opportunity to express their opinion as to how well Danielle Smith, as the leader of the UCP, is doing. And again, we're not telling people how to vote in that leadership review. But if you support Danielle, come out and support her. If you have concerns with Danielle, come out and, cast your ballot. Either way. So it's just really important to get involved, to come out. And for me, more importantly, there are 30 plus policies that we are all going to have an opportunity to have our say. And those are far more important to me than the leadership review. So welcome to 1905. I'm going to actually bring up some of our policies here, and we will go from there. Come back here to just me for just one moment, and we are going to bring up our immigration policy to kind of start the evening. And there we go. Oops, it's taking a moment here. Okay, I'm going to click off this because it doesn't seem to want to come up. And we'll click back on here, and it's not working. It's still not working. Yeah. Sorry, everyone. Just kind of trying to bring up the immigration policy here for you so that you could all see it. And there I am, but the screen does not want to show up. So maybe what I'll do is maybe I can go this way and we'll find another way around it. Learn more, immigration, and we'll do this too. No, it doesn't want to work. I'm just going to try clicking on another screen here to see if that works. Sorry, everyone. I am... Okay, so what we're going to do is I'll just start talking about immigration, obviously, because this is probably one of the biggest things that are on people's minds today. And it is probably one of the biggest issues that have come up. And we don't necessarily get a lot of controversial sort of comments on this one. I think it's very much in the news. And so for a lot of people, I mean, immigration, I want to talk about this because it seems to be one where Danielle Smith happens to flip-flop quite a bit. And one of the concerns is we keep getting called out here for being tough on Danielle Smith. Well, no, I'm not going to cheerlead Danielle Smith. I'm here really to call out the promises that have not been kept. There's lots of people who are saying, patting her on the back and telling her what a great job she's doing. I think there are promises that were made, things that she campaigned on, that she's fallen short of. And my responsibility as a citizen and somebody who wants to see change happen is to make sure that we call her out on those things. And I'm hoping to give her fair warning here as to what she can do to actually help improve as far as many conservatives are concerned right now. So immigration being one of them. I think realistically, just like Quebec has more control and more influence over its own immigration policies. Danielle Smith herself had pretty much rolled out the red carpet and said, everybody welcome, come on into Alberta, please, all people are welcome, you know, immigration as well as migration. And I think the real test here is the fact that we have major issues with infrastructure, healthcare, education, our roads, housing, inflation. Now we have unemployment, immigration. And I talk a lot about this when I talk about my Alberta pension plan presentation, is that realistically more people does not mean that one doesn't want to come up either. Sorry, guys. So more people, adding more people does not actually add to our standard of living. And that's the sad reality. And so by her rolling out the red carpet, inviting everybody in, it's just compounding a problem we already have. Our economy can't absorb everybody. And of course, for me, I also have cultural concerns as well. I mean, we have a very strong Western heritage here. We're just as unique a culture as Quebec is. And if we don't integrate people into that society in an appropriate manner, in a manner that we can absorb, then we actually risk ourselves losing that identity, losing that culture. And so that's something that's worth preserving, in my opinion. And I think most Albertans actually agree with me on that matter. And with respect to standard of living and costs, you know, affordability, we are giving up opportunities that our children and our grandchildren should be taking advantage of, that are being handed to other people. And I think, like anything, we need to take care of our own first. We can't take care of our other people until we first put our own house in order. And so that's where, you know, the immigration policy has boiled down to. And Danielle Smith has, on a number of occasions, embraced this mass immigration, this globalist idea that more people coming into the province, more people coming into the country is a good thing. And I don't understand that. So, you know, more than enough people, whether it's Jordan Peterson or, you know, even the Toronto Star these days, talking about mass immigration and the concerns and the problems that it's created, Danielle Smith has challenged the Red Deer Town Council to become a 1 million person city. And it's currently just over 100,000 person population. So could you imagine the problems we're having now? And people could say, oh, but that's over a matter of time. Well, how much time? You know, it's like she keeps talking about doubling our population here within the next 20 years. That population can't come from, you know, birth rates, because we're not replacing our population that quickly. So that means we are integrating and bringing more people in. And then her logic, and not only her speaking to that now, but some of her ministers speaking the same rhetoric, is about, well, you know, it would give us more political clout. Well, you show me one country, one province, one state today where they have mass immigration coming in without the proper systems and infrastructure to actually integrate people properly, where that has actually been helpful for a conservative country or a conservative government in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't exist. If you look at what's going on in France, you look at what's going on in Germany, you look at what's going on in Ireland, you look at what's going on in the United States right now, they are bringing people in to vote Liberal and progressive. They are not bringing them in to vote conservative. Danielle Smith somehow seems to think that if we bring people into these smaller communities, we're going to convert them into conservative-minded individuals. Well, if we have a decade or an entire generation, maybe, but that's really not going to do us much good in the decade or the generation that it takes to change things. So just words of caution there. We're just trying to bring attention to an issue that's extremely important, that has a huge impact on the lives of Albertans, and one in which I think the majority of Albertans are concerned about, that she just seems to be consistently turning a deaf ear to, and or depending on who she's speaking with, whether it's Jordan Peterson or Corey Morgan, or if it's at a town hall, you know, she seems to flip-flop back and forth. Oh, I'm not doing that. Oh, yes, we are doing that. Oh, no, we're not doing that. Yes, I do encourage that. So it's like, just pick a stance. Where do you actually sit on this? Because it is very much, in my opinion, a globalist issue, one that I'm not particularly happy about. And whether you agree or not, that's okay. That's your prerogative. But of course, we want to make sure that we're bringing it up. So that's our immigration. The other one, obviously, is we're going to bring this up here too, is Red Deer. I had a couple of things to show you on that. The flat tax. So for so many people, they have asked me, Nadine, why a flat tax? And for a lot of people, they've heard of the Alberta Advantage. And we did used to have a flat tax system under the Ralph Klein. Ralph Klein came in and made some really tough decisions and followed through on them, something that Danielle Smith has been very poor at, in my opinion. The flat tax is one of two things. I want a flat tax. Not only does it actually level the playing field. There comes that principle, right? One rule of law that applies to everybody equally. But there's two reasons for that. It keeps more money in the pocket of Albertans. Now, people go, oh, well, how is it that, the lower income people are going to pay the same amount of tax as the higher income? Well, we can set an established boundary for everybody. So let's say the first 60,000 of household income or individual income, whatever the number is, it's just theoretical. You throw that out there, and that is everybody's personal exemption. That is the same rule of law that applies to everybody equally. Now, interestingly enough, with a flat tax, what it does, the part that I'm probably most interested in, and Milton Friedman actually does a really good job of explaining this, in some of his old videos. If anybody's interested, go look that up. It's about removing political favor. So we see so much cronyism today and so much political corruption that goes on. And a lot of it is because government can actually pick and choose special interest groups, lobbyists, activists, who they can offer special favor to. And taxes and or tax credit, tax exemptions, those types of things, subsidies, those are things that they actually utilize quite a bit in doing that. So for me, it's about leveling the playing field for everybody, putting more money and making life more affordable for every Albertan, making life easier to raise a family. Everybody talks about why aren't we having more kids, but nobody really asks why we aren't having more kids. And it's important to note that for a lot of our young generation coming up, not only do they feel defeated as far as they don't feel like they'll ever own a house or have the same things that you and I had the opportunity to own, but kids are expensive and they just don't feel like they can afford to have a family. So, how do we make life more affordable? And if we need more people in this province, how about, we start right from ground zero and we encourage our young men and women to get together and at younger ages, and maybe the career is not as important as we've emphasized it to be if life is actually more affordable and people have more opportunity to engage in other activities. So flat tax is another one. We've also talked about the Alberta Pension Plan. Now, for a lot of people, many of you have actually seen me do my Alberta Pension Plan presentation. And the truth of the matter there is that Danielle Smith pretty much gave up speaking about it. They really boondoggled, I think, the way this was introduced, and then they completely boondoggled it by backing off and leaving this big gap for the NDP and the unions to fill with a bunch of lies, fears, and misconceptions. And I started traveling around the province to kind of help battle that, those fallacies that were being promoted, because a lot of people have this false sense of security around the Canada Pension Plan, and they think that, the story was Danielle Smith was going to steal your pension, which is an impossible task. I used to joke, like, where's she putting it, in her Panama bank account, overseas somewhere? It's like, let's be realistic. Now, management of that obviously is a concern, and we want to make sure that it was done properly, but she's now re-engaged a little bit more, and I think honestly, because of 1905 and some of the issues that we've brought forward, you're hearing her speak to some more of these issues again a little bit more frequently, because we are challenging her and pushing back. Public pressure is how you make change happen, and that is the only thing, in my opinion, that politicians actually respond to is public pressure. They need to feel uncomfortable in their position, because when they feel comfortable, they're just going to go along, and leadership is not about following. It's not about getting in front of the parade. How many times have you heard Danielle Smith and other politicians find a good parade and get in front of it? Well, that's not really leadership. The leadership happened with the person or the individuals or the groups that actually created the parade. That is leadership. Getting in front of it and hijacking a parade, that's not leadership. And we're seeing that so much in politics today. You know, people are only jumping on board when things become popular, not necessarily when they are the right time to do it. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. So the Alberta pension plan, we're starting to see that again resurface. And she says, well, we need to wait for a number in the fall. Well, yes and no. It'd be really nice to have a number, obviously. And it's certainly something that could be easily more identifiable to work with as far as telling people what exactly the benefits that we can offer, whether it's reducing the rates or increasing the benefits or a bit of both. But the reality is we actually don't need anything from the federal government to do this. And the part that really upsetted me the most was Danielle Smith actually put Bill 2 into place and said we have to have a referendum, and she legislated it. So if you want to have a referendum on anything here in the province, it's just really a matter of pick a date and have a referendum. You didn't have to put it into legislature. So now, regardless of who is in government, and the thing you have to remember with government, it's a UCP government today. It could be a different government next election. We don't know, right? So if you are going to have to legislate, you know, that there's a referendum, well, you know, will it happen? Won't it happen? I don't know. She should have just picked a date, made it happen, and or in my opinion, she should have just went ahead and did it, and that's called leadership. Okay, so now we've got the Alberta Pension Plan. Constitutional Convention, I think everybody will agree that Alberta gets the short end of the stick from Canada over and over again. It's been that way for our entire history. And equalization payments, Danielle Smith came out with the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which is, you know, the Alberta Sovereignty Within Canada Act. But really, you know, a lot of letter writing has been going on. So the carbon tax, we're still having to deal with that. Equalization, we're still having to deal with that. You know, I think it's just we have to have a better system and a better means of working with the federal government. But Alberta can't be doing it on its own. So, you know, let's get some constitutional conventions on the go here. Let's start talking with some of the other provinces. You're starting to see that happen more and more now. Even Newfoundland and Labrador, you know, BC has come on board on particular issues. And let's, as provinces, reattain the autonomy that realistically, jurisdictionally belongs to us and push back on the federal government together. So that's constitutional convention. And then, of course, there's leadership accountability. This one is my favorite because pretty promises and smiling and saying, oh, pretty please, would you do this, does not work. And the government, and it doesn't matter which government it is, pick one anywhere around the world, politicians are really good at making promises, really crappy at following through on them. And so this leadership accountability petition is about, you have 24 months from the time that you actually have made your campaign promise and gotten elected to when you actually so 24, sorry, I just had an interruption there, forgive me. 24 months, and if you have not followed through on the promises that you have made when you were campaigning, whether it be as a written promise or a verbal commitment that you've made to a group or to media, 24 months. And if you have not followed through, then you have to have a leadership review. It's not optional. So you have to have a leadership review. And people have the right to know why you haven't been able to fulfill that promise. So here again, we have Danielle Smith who talked about flat tax and reducing taxes. And now it's like, well, sorry, we didn't really have the revenues to do that. But here's the reality. It's not a priority. That's the reality. It's not that they didn't have the revenues. We have the biggest government we've ever had and the biggest budget we've ever had. She's talking about putting a high-speed train from Calgary to Edmonton. That's a bigger priority than making life more affordable for you. How about we reduce the fuel taxes? She put that back on, and yet you've got Manitoba who actually took it off to make life more affordable for people. So it's not that they can't do it. It's not that she can't do it. It is really about she hasn't prioritized it. She hasn't made that one of her major priorities. And so to me, I looked at the affordability issue in this province, and I went, that's one area where, in my opinion, that should have been honored and it should have been done quickly. Now, a lot of people tell me, Nadine, she needs more time. She needs more time. Here is a little history lesson for those of us who have just recently gotten involved in politics and are new to politics. If is going to make bold or controversial moves, they typically do it within the first 12 months. Let's even be generous, first 18. We are well past that time with Danielle Smith. And so she has made promises on parental rights. She has made promises on the human rights issues around COVID and medical choice. She has made promises to the Coots boys, which she, I don't know if you were following today, 6 years and 6.5 year sentences for mischief. This is just criminal, what's going on with the judicial system in our society. And then she's also made promises with respect to the taxes, which she didn't follow through on. Climate change has been a big issue for me, although we don't even really talk about it much here. And of course, AHS was a big one, and she hasn't really followed through with much on that. And I can go on and on and on. I think the point is that a promise made must be a promise kept. And if you're going to do these big promises, they needed to be done and implemented sooner rather than later, because otherwise it just gets too far into the years closer and closing the gap on the election, the next election, and that's where their focus is. Well, I need to get reelected, because that's all politicians think about, is I just need to get reelected, right? And that's the sad reality. So that is our policies. And then I'm just going to now put this out here and see if anybody has any real questions for me, and to see if there are any comments that anybody has. I know for some people watching, they may have some questions about some of the rumors that have been going around. Some of them have actually been quite juicy. Not true, but juicy nonetheless. And they don't really bother me much. Just to give you a little bit of my background, I obviously came into politics with Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada. And I fell in love with the policies, with the principled approach. And Max has been very consistent with the policies. None of them have changed since day one. We talked about immigration. You want to talk about leadership. How about talking about immigration back in 2018, when it was not popular to get in front of that parade? There was no parade. There was a handful of individuals going, hey, we may want to slow this down. Look at what's happening in Europe. There's real problems. Our economy can't keep up. But nobody wanted to listen. It was just easier to slander and try and character assassinate and call us racist, rather than look at the real issues that we were bringing up and addressing. So that's leadership, is, foreseeing a problem and trying to get ahead of the problem, trying to remedy it, create solutions before it becomes a full-on crisis. And nobody else had the courage to do that, including the Conservative Party of Canada. The Liberals were just exasperating the problem, and the Conservatives were happy enough to go along because it wasn't very politically, in the polls, popular to provide dissension. So, that's my background. And people have asked me as well, okay, well, where were you when Jason Kenney was in power? Well, I have a lot of videos on this YouTube channel that will tell you where I was when Jason Kenney was in power. And I was pretty outspoken and pretty vocal around the intrusion and trampling of our rights. And I campaigned to put Danielle Smith as well into the position that she's in, and gave her my endorsement and support. I was very hopeful we were going to see big changes. And unfortunately, I'm not seeing the changes happen. And I think it's important that we remind our politicians that they were put there by a group of individuals who support them based upon the promises that they make. And that was what Jason Kenney said. Well, at one point, he was just going to replace his base. He didn't want them because he didn't like what they were saying. And well, we saw the outcome of that for Jason Kenney. I'm hopefully giving Danielle some heads up as to the fact that people are unhappy. Conservatives are unhappy with the way things are going, whether it's people who say, okay, it's not happening fast enough, or for whatever reason. But the reality is people are unhappy. And, I want to bring those issues forward. These are the issues. Please fix them. How about we fix them? How about, you actually put a plan and a timeline in place so that people can actually understand and see what it is that you are going to do, when it is that you're going to do it, so we can hold you to account to that. And again, if you're not willing to account to it, 24 months, you make a promise. If you break that promise, you have to come in front of us and we'll do a leadership review, and we can tell you whether or not we think that you are fit to remain the leader or other. One of the things with the leadership review that I always found a little frustrating is they give you this yes or no. Do you support the leader or don't you support the leader? Well, I support the leader in some things and I don't support the leader in other things. How about you put it on a scale of a 0 to 100? Where do my support range come in? Maybe I support her 60% of the time, maybe I only support her 20% of the time, maybe I support her 90% of the time. But it's really interesting right now because I've heard rumors from, the Premier's office that, people believe she has a 95% support rate. I don't believe that to be true. And one of the things we're actually going to do right now after all these rumors and everything else that have come out is we're actually going to do a survey and we're going to ask people, do you support Danielle Smith in the leadership? And is there anybody else that you happen to think would be a good leader for this province? And the reality is we need more than one leader for the province. We're only going to have one premier, but we have how many seats representing MLAs? And in the next upcoming election, do you support A, B, C, or do you support D, E, F? Where do we fall on that spectrum? So knowing who other people, listening to other suggestions as to leadership is not just about, people think that we want to remove Danielle Smith. I'm not here to remove Danielle Smith. I'm not actually asking people, who they are voting for. What I want you to come to the AGM to do is actually vote for the policies, immigration, Alberta pension plan. I want you to stand up for the Constitutional Convention. I want you to support leadership accountability. These are the things that are important to me. And then how you decide to vote on the leadership review, that is your conscience. You have to decide whether or not you feel Danielle Smith is doing a good enough job to keep her there, or if you'd prefer to see somebody else do that. People look at me, they go, Nadine, if not her, then who? I don't know. But I do know that I am going to keep public pressure on to make sure that we see Danielle do the changes that I think people want to see, and then all is well. And I do also know there are groups out there who would be happy to see her go, and if that's a reality, then it's best that we're prepared for that as well. So I'm not the person responsible for making that decision. You are. So here is a perfect example of how you get involved. If you want Danielle to stay, if you want her to go, it doesn't matter to me. It does matter to you, though, and it does matter to the province and to the future of this province. Your grandchildren, your children matter. And so either way, you need to buy a UCP membership if you are a conservative. We were accused just recently of asking leftists to buy memberships to come to the UCP AGM so that they could vote to remove Danielle Smith. I am not a leftist. I am not a globalist. I've got 6 years of videos and social media for anybody who wants to take a look at that. That's the other thing. I've had people like, I won't even say their names because it's not worth it to give them the airtime, but I'm a World Economic Forum puppet. Like, really? Oh my goodness. Like, that is, that you want to talk about lies and defamation. That is a real stretch. I mean, 6 years of truth and calling out the government when it was not popular to do so. And, the death threats that I received in elections, people have been talking about politics. Well, it's gotten less and less easy to get involved because, more and more we're becoming divided and the issues are becoming such hot topics and so controversial that, reality kind of gets thrown out the window and people just react with emotion. And so I don't, blame people for having strong opinions. I think it's great to have strong opinions. The world is going to change only for those who have the courage to speak up for what is right. And the time to do that is not next week. The time to do that is now. And we all have a responsibility to do that. So have a little courage, have a little faith. Things will always work out the way that they were meant to, in my opinion. I believe that we have so much control, but there are things beyond our control, but everything happens for a reason. And regardless of whatever outcome we're faced with, whenever we're faced with it, we will deal with it. Why? Because we're Albertans. And the one thing I have learned about Albertans is, man, we are tough, we are industrious, we are innovative, we are creative. Danielle Smith used to run on this idea when she was with the Wild Rose, that smaller government with less spending. And, when I see the biggest government we've ever had with the biggest spending, that really concerns me, because again, the globalist agenda is really truly this climate change. It's this mass immigration. It's the people don't know best, government knows best. And that truly concerns me, because I have so much faith in people. I honestly do. I get excited when the market is the solution and government is truly the problem. Again, Milton Friedman, Ludwig von Mises, you look at Hayek, Frederick Bastiat, some of these old economists that I've studied over the years. And the reality is, they will all tell you that government is a problem. The bigger it gets, the bigger the problem actually becomes. And so we have to start working towards a smaller government. And, Danielle's comments about, well, we balanced the budget. I don't believe that using royalties that belong to each and every Albertan, that can be used for so many different things. I don't care if you're writing a check and giving it back as a dividend to each and every Albertan. That money, those royalties belong to Albertans. Allow Albertans to decide for themselves how best to spend that money. Okay, that is not balancing the budget. If you're going to balance a budget, well, take your revenues that you have coming in. That means your tax revenues. And that is what you have to work with. So government keeps expanding, and we keep threatening to have to take away services because, well, we don't know how oil and gas is going to perform next year. Well, this is not an issue if actually government stuck to its primary role and its objective. Look at Calgary, for example. On the municipal side, we've got, infrastructure just falling apart. But yet, man, we've got pretty rainbow sidewalks. Again, it boils down to priority, and it boils down to political will. And so for me, I've always been an advocate, for example, of term limits. People have accused me of wanting, I just want to get into government at whatever cost. No, I don't. Do you think I ran in 2021 for the People's Party of Canada because I knew I was going to get elected? Hell no. Let's be realistic. It's like, I obviously knew that I wasn't going to get elected. But the ideas, that the People's Party of Canada had, conservative ideas. It's not even about the party. It's about the fact that they were conservative ideas. Those were worth sharing. They were worth keeping alive. Why? Because now, as you're beginning to see it, today you've got the Conservative Party of Canada and Pierre Poilievre actually speaking to the same policies that we highlighted in 2018, 2019, and again in 2021. Defund CBC. Whoever knew it was going to be popular? Well, it wasn't so popular in 2019, and now it's a party platform. Axe the tax. People are being taxed to death in this province, and affordability is a huge issue. We have more people now lined up for food banks than we've ever had in the history of our country. So there's a lot that needs to be fixed and a lot that needs to be done. And I know for a lot of people, you want to cheerlead Danielle Smith. That's great. And I'm okay with that. That's everybody's a prerogative to share their opinions and what's good and what's bad. People say, well, Nadine, it needs to be a more balanced approach. Well, things have gone so far this way that coming back to center, if you take the balance, well, you're still left of center. So sometimes it takes such a hard push, right of center to bring things back. But the reality is, that's where things need to be. So I'm okay with applying the public pressure and not being the cheerleader, even if that means not necessarily being popular. That's never been my objective. My objective is, I have a family that, I'm raising in this province. This is my home. And I intend to do now whatever I can to make sure that this is some place that she can grow up in, be proud of, and have the same opportunities that this province has blessed me with. And if we keep going on the trajectory that we are, that is indeed not going to happen. So I stepped up to the plate, got involved. Why? Not for me, for her, right? And for your children, your grandchildren. It's for the next generation. And so I'm challenging each and every one of you to do exactly the same thing. Get involved. Go get that UCP membership. It's $10. And then go get yourself a UCP AGM ticket. It is 2 days. And if you have to, pick one. Show up on November 2nd in Red Deer. Cast your ballots for the policies that matter most to you. We're going to be reviewing those here shortly and helping people kind of narrow down what we think are good policies worthy of voting for. That doesn't mean you have to vote for them. What I'm asking for your support on is those 5 policies that I just highlighted. And then after that, we're going to take a look at them. We're going to say, okay, which ones do we want to support? Which ones are, the highest priority today? And then the rest we can deal with on another day, right? In another year. So that is pretty much all I have to kind of offer tonight. And again, just put it out there and let people know whether or not they have any questions that they might have. We've got a few here. What does 1905 need to see from the UCP? I think I've touched on that a little bit. I think stop propagating the lies like net zero. I don't think they belong in the same paragraph, let alone the same sentence. It's a lie in my opinion, and I think Danielle Smith knows it's a lie. Can we do things better for the environment? Absolutely. Should we? Absolutely. But the reality is net zero is not scientific. There is no science to indicate that we have a problem with carbon dioxide. There is not a pollutant, and that's one. And then we haven't even really mentioned that. But the reality is, the APP, one of her ministers had said when the APP, Pierre Poilievre is elected, the APP goes away. One of her ministers is quoted as having said that to a small group, very well aware, came from a very reliable source. Whatever happens in Ottawa is irrelevant to what happens here provincially in this province. I am so tired of the UCP, and this is one of the reasons why, even for me, I was disqualified, was because I don't know how you could not support, the comment was, our federal counterparts in Ottawa, the Conservative Party of Canada. And I went, wait a minute. The UCP had been calling out the NDP at that point for being nothing more than a branch. If you're a member of one, you're a member of the other, federal. And you just basically said we're one and the same. The UCP, if you're UCP provincially, you should be Conservative Party of Canada federally. And so, let's, irrelevant of whatever happens in Ottawa, the Alberta pension plan is something that is good for Albertans, would benefit not only this generation, but future generations tremendously. It is something that needs to be done. Why? Because it's the right thing to do for Alberta. So I want to see the Alberta pension plan. I want to see a plan for that. I want to see opportunities. And I don't want to see more government officials running around telling everybody how great it is. Go find some qualified individuals who can speak to this. I'm a chartered investment manager. I've been running around the province telling people the benefits. We were doing it on a shoestring budget, and unfortunately, you can only reach so many people because we don't have the mass media's attention, but that needs to happen. And, it's not just about, because Danielle Smith said so. We have to have the numbers, and I was able to prove to people, I had people who showed up at my meetings in masks and were NDP union and left going, yeah, I don't trust Danielle Smith, but I have to agree, this is the best thing for Alberta and for Albertans, was an Alberta pension plan. I took that as a huge win. I'm like, awesome, thank you, right? It's like, I don't trust the government either. It doesn't matter who it is at the helm. I don't care about the leadership. I care about the policies. I care about the actions that are taking, and I care about Alberta. That's my priority, is putting Alberta first. So it is a matter of making sure that we do continue to push back on Ottawa to get the best deal for Alberta, that constitutional convention, working with our provinces to make sure that we are flat tax. How about you just do what you said you were going to do and reduce taxes? Make life a little more affordable here for everybody right now, today. That's something that you can do. There's no reason not to. So if it means you have to cut somewhere else, if it means you have to adjust your revenue projections, well, then do that, Danielle. I'm sorry, but a promise made must be a promise kept. And this one is very time sensitive and critical. There are people that literally are lining up at food banks that don't need to be doing so. So for me, those are some of the ones that could be done, and could be done right away. Leadership accountability, we're working on that, and we're going to keep pushing on that. Some of the other questions, how do I get involved? There are a ton of ways to get involved. Again, if not even with 1905, with any organization, find something that rings dear to your heart and get out. Parental rights is another one. You know, Danielle, you made a commitment in January and nothing has happened. Alberta Bill of Rights, you made a commitment and nothing has happened. COVID, you promised an investigation. You apparently have a report on your desk, but nothing has happened. So these are all things that need to happen, promises that were made that people are going to hold you to, and or you risk losing their support. And I mean, you have a very strong support base. You know, don't give them a reason to look elsewhere. You know, do what you say you're going to do, and you know, you'll have that support. So getting involved, you can contact us at info at 1905 Committee. And if you want to get involved, want to help, there's always people that need to be called. You can help going door to door if you want, just throwing out some flyers. The best way you can get involved is just speak to your family and friends. Oh my goodness, how easy it is to invite everybody over for dinner, have a conversation about what's going on, politics a little bit, tell them where we are. Hey, if you want your voice to matter, right? It's not on election day. Yeah, that matters on election day, but 4,000 people, right, are going to steer the direction of this province through policy on November 1 and 2. 2 days. That's all it takes for you to get involved. Okay, so go buy your ticket. If for whatever reason, I know money is an issue for a lot of people this year, if money is an issue, please reach out to us on our Contact Me page on the website, which is www.1905committee.ca, and let us know that, hey, would love to go, could use a helping hand. We can help with that. Okay, we have been funded by some smaller donors and some larger donors, but the generosity of Albertans is like, there are people who honestly believe that nobody should be left behind from having their voice heard, and attending an AGM just simply because of finances. So if you can afford the time and you don't quite have the resources financially to do so, please do reach out to us. We'll see what we can do to help. What happens after the AGM? Great question. I guess it's really going to depend on the outcome. It's still about leadership accountability, right? And it's still about pushing on these issues, immigration, climate change. The AGM is just policy. So let's see what policies are really going to be the highlight, the emphasis, the priority. For me, I'd love to see education. Danielle Smith used to be a big advocate of voucher systems. And now you're seeing her talk about, you know, developing more public schools. And I'm like, well, what happened to the voucher system? I'd really like the voucher system, and then allow the private sector to actually come up with some new curriculums and some new opportunities for parents to be able to participate. You know, if I got the $13,000 and 10 other parents got $13,000 for each child, instead of going to public school, we could go hire a teacher. Well, the beauty of homeschooling, and I know because I've been doing it for 3 years now with my own daughter, the beauty of homeschool is it's a few hours a day. So we could go hire a teacher. Let's say 30,000 of 10 parents and 13,000, that's $130,000. Let's say we keep 30,000, here you go, field trips, you want to do workbooks, schooling, materials, whatever, more than enough. There's $100,000 to pay a teacher. Let's say they get together from 9 till 2. Right? And then the teacher still requires, you know, a couple of hours here and there to prep beforehand or prep after, or whether it's 9 to 12. I mean, homeschooling needs no more than 2 to 3 hours, to be honest, each and every day. So depending on parents' needs, you tell me what teacher is not going to be excited about that opportunity. So we just created this huge market opportunity for people to have a better quality and a better standard of living. There is no pay cut, right? So there's lots of opportunities there that just are not being discussed anymore, that, you know, I was very hopeful that we were going to see strong actions taken. So that was another one. Somebody said here, I'm the only one who seems to be having any comments. Anyone else? Really mysterious. It's sad how the right wing doesn't understand basic climate science. I think that most of them do, but they just choose to ignore it because money means more to them. Unfortunately, I think there's some deeper rooted issues going on with the climate change agenda. And you're right, science has been a word that's been hijacked, in my opinion, and it's not necessarily truth anymore. Science was about, if you can't question science, it's not science. It's called propaganda, right? And we saw that with COVID, unfortunately. People who challenged the narrative literally were shut down. You couldn't do that. And now you're seeing with the Liberal government a lot of the censorship that was happening and is happening in this country. And that's not democratic. And you look up what's going, a little off topic here, but what's going on even around the world. If you consider the fact that the United States now has a nominee for president that wasn't elected, there was no vote. Kamala Harris, for example, was just appointed nominee for the presidency of the United States. Not a single American, individual had a say from the party as to whether or not that was their choice. So that is not democracy. I love how people talk today about, the biggest threats to our democracy. The biggest threat to our democracy today is our own governments and their refusal to allow the people to be heard. Even within the UCP, one of the struggles I have is they keep saying grassroots, 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 but they're not grassroots. Everything is coming from the top down for the most part. Yes, Danielle is out and she's doing town halls. Thank you for doing that. You're listening to people. But here's the reality is that when you are pre-selecting candidates and disqualifying candidates because you disagree with them, their opinion doesn't 100% align with yours, that is limiting the choice of the individuals whom they were asked to represent them. And so, I can just call on my own personal experience there. And it's okay. What I've come to realize is that, I can have more influence outside of government, actually. And I'm probably glad that didn't happen because one of the things that they were concerned about is they couldn't control me, right? As you can see, my social media 6 years hasn't really changed. My message hasn't changed. For me, it wasn't about being a politician. It's about making change happen and ensuring that my daughter has got a future that I'm proud to have her grow up in, to make sure that she has the opportunities that I had. And, when you've got people who are not swayed necessarily by money or power or influence, yeah, we're harder to control. Absolutely. Critical thinkers. But the reality is people are being robbed of their opportunity to vote for people like me and others. I'm not the only one. There was plenty of them. Danielle had promised to reopen nominations, for example, and that never happened. Right? The COVID thing, on rights, we went from it's happening whether you like it or not to, it's rather a moot point now that, mandates are not being enforced and my supporters would understand. No, we don't understand. Anything I have learned with government is that when they do something and they've had as much success as they had with COVID and lockdowns, boy, they're looking for an excuse to do it again. And that's where the Alberta Bill of Rights became so important to a lot of people is, we've lived through that once. We are not going to live through that again. So how do we put legislation into place to make sure that no matter what goes on around us, that the individual has the right, to make those types of decisions for themselves and they can't be discriminated against because they made a different decision. And again, if people think that the government only does something once when they had that kind of success, you're kidding yourself, right? It's going to happen again. I have somebody commenting here. It's like, nice hat in the background. This is my 1905 hat. Everybody sees me wear the brown one. I do have a blue one as well. Make sure it's on straight there. But I do have a blue one as well, and they are $35 for anybody who's watching this, but you do have to pay for the shipping and or arrange for pickup. So if you were interested, you like a 1905 hat. If nothing else, they are a little battered, worn, and torn, just like Alberta is, a little bit rugged, just like Albertans are. People have asked me, is a little Yellowstone? I was like, that's okay. I'm okay with that. Little Yellowstone is fine as well. The reality is, we're here to push the envelope. We're here to apply a lot of public pressure. I'm not here to be a cheerleader. I am here to apply a lot of public pressure on this government and the next to make sure that, politicians are living up to the promises that they make. So I think that I have pretty much answered a lot of the questions. I've answered a lot of the rumors. If there's anybody has any other questions, I am really not a hard person to find, as most of you will attest to who've ever reached out to me. If you want to reach out to me personally, Nadine at nadinewellwood.ca, and or send in something to info at on our contact me page. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to go that route, that is going into thousands of comments and inquiries. So if there is something truly pressing, you want me personally to respond to something, I do respond to every email that I get. And you just send me an email at nadinewellwood.ca. Write your question down. If I haven't answered it in this live stream, please watch the live stream first to make sure that I have not already answered the question. But if I haven't answered it and you do have another question, please do send it to me. I am all too happy to provide you with a response. And oftentimes, leave me a phone number. I will often, if I can, pick up the phone and just call you and have the conversation. If that's something I feel is worthy and pressing, and to talk to people is a blessing. It's not an inconvenience to me at all. It's something that I'm very happy to share opinions and ideas with individuals. And we don't have to agree on everything. That is perfectly okay with me. Perfectly okay with me. It's the fact that we don't agree, but we can still have the conversation, because that is actually how you get to the truth of a matter, right? Is to have the discussion and the debate. And maybe I've overlooked something, maybe you've overlooked something, but that conversation, coming from a place of mutual respect, that's how the world should work, right? And so with that in mind, I think we're pretty much at our hour. And I am going to sign off and say goodnight. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening and participating, asking your questions. And if there is anything more that I can answer, again, Nadine at nadinewellwood1905committee.ca. Hit the contact me, and we will do our best to get back to you as quickly as we can. Now, we are a grassroots movement. So I'm really terrible at this. I always forget to ask. But if you don't ask, you don't get. And the reality is 1905 is grassroots, and we are funded by Albertans. So if you like the message, if you want somebody who doesn't mind putting the public pressure on and has got the courage enough to do that, you need to support those individuals. So if you do have a few extra dollars that you can afford, please do donate to our cause. We would certainly appreciate it. We are putting every dollar that we have back into surveys, back into advertising, back into the what matters most, and trying to find out what is important to Albertans, and then applying the pressure and our campaigns to make sure that government is responding to your voice, to what matters to you. So again, if you do have the means and the ability, something as simple as some of that money that has been donated is going back to people who can't afford necessarily to go to an AGM. So if you can afford to go to an AGM, and hey, let's say you want to bring a friend, and you don't have a friend in mind, make an extra contribution, and we'll make sure that gets into the hands of somebody who does want to come and cast their ballot on November 1 and November 2 in Red Deer. At least I think we've covered a lot of ground, and hopefully that helps. And I am now going to sign off with a thank you again very much for taking the time to listen. And we will see you soon. And I am doing a podcast with Sean Newman. Last thing I promise, on Thursday evening. I do believe he's actually speaking to Danielle Smith in the morning, and then we are going to do a podcast in the afternoon. So I look forward to hearing the questions that he has for me, and hopefully that his viewers have for me, and we'll go from there. All right, God bless everyone. Good night.